Hi, I'm Lindsay from Lindsay Elliott Coaching, and welcome to this video, which is all about emotions. So in this video, the purpose of it is really to answer the question, why don't we want to feel it all? So why don't we just allow ourselves to feel every single emotion? Why are there emotions that we fear? Why do we feel like we need to push certain emotions away? So in short, why don't we just let ourselves have the whole emotional landscape that's possible as a human being? And I think that the main reasons for that are, and what I'm going to address here is so that I can hopefully take the fear out of emotions, help us to understand them, and look at some truths about emotions so that maybe we do have the freedom to feel it all, to just not have to monitor, manage, what's the word, be hypervigilant for, scanning for how am I feeling, for what emotions are coming, so that we can kind of take that off of our to-do list and give it up for good and just let the emotional experience be what the emotional experience needs to be. So I'm going to go through and look at a few points that I hope will be really helpful in us understanding this. So let's look at what, first of all, like what the issue is, what it's like for most of us. So certainly, almost all human beings that I know, and myself included, has a certain fear or dislike of certain emotions. So for example, some people really hate it when they feel anxious, other people really don't like it if they feel angry, other people feel that jealousy is an emotion that they don't want. For some people it's sadness or loneliness. So there's a whole variety of emotions that we as human beings and even in society has kind of deemed that these are bad or wrong and shouldn't be felt. And then there's also those kind of other emotions, so things like joy and love and peace, that we can also, even though most people kind of would say, oh yeah, I want to feel peaceful all the time, or I want to feel joyful all of the time, or I want to feel love all of the time, there can also be a restriction on that end where it's like it can feel scary to feel too much love or too much joy or to be peaceful too much of the time. And I know if you're someone who's watching this and you're stuck in some really like what we class kind of like difficult or bad emotions, that might look crazy to think that you wouldn't want to feel love all the time. But I've definitely come across people that I've worked with where they've kind of like want to clamp down on even those very strong or intense positive emotions, because that can feel scary too. So what we end up with is like a bandwidth of an emotional bandwidth that's actually quite narrow, of what's kind of like acceptable, what our mind, and it really is only ever our mind that's telling us what is acceptable in terms of our emotions, but that width of what we are prepared to experience can be quite narrow. So we don't really want all the strong emotions over here like anger or rage or deep sadness or grief or jealousy, and we also don't really want like huge love and joy and peace and all of that over here. So we end up, rather than having it all, which is the purpose of this video, we end up with this kind of like narrow bandwidth. And also in feeling or believing that we have to navigate our emotional landscape, we also end up engaging in loads of behaviours that we believe innocently is helping us to control our emotions. Behaviours such as habits and addictions, things that we think are helping us to manage our emotions, which aren't. But that can also be part of the issue. And we end up in this situation where we're kind of holding or feel like we're trying to hold certain emotions at bay, that we're in this point of resistance. And really, I think, why do we do that? And what about if we don't have to? So what is stopping us from just feeling it all, or from having it all as I'm framing it in this video? So I've made a list of a few things that I think are the main things that I've come across in the human experience and the people that I've worked with as to why we wouldn't want to just feel it all. So I'm going to go through this list briefly and then look at how the truth about emotions is actually the complete opposite of all of these beliefs. So what we tend to believe about emotions is that they aren't safe, that there's certain emotions that if we feel them, our experience of them isn't safe. We often innocently believe that we're going to get stuck in a certain emotion. And this can be particularly true if we've got an emotion that we really don't like, such as anxiety or stress, that seems to keep coming back round and around, or anger that seems to keep coming back round and around. We can kind of feel like we're stuck in it. There's also a belief that they're permanent, that like if I feel this emotion, I'm always going to feel this way. It's that kind of narrative that the mind gives it. And this is a big one, this next one, that it means something about us. So if an experience of anxiety passes through me, if an experience of anger passes through me, this means I am an anxious person, or this means I am an angry person, or this means I am a jealous person. And because the mind doesn't want to, think badly of itself, really, is what it's talking about, we don't want to have that label on us. We don't want to believe that about ourselves. And so we innocently then just push it all away because we believe that the presence of an emotion, and particularly, as I mentioned in the examples before, an emotion that we feel a lot of the time, we innocently believe that it means that that's the type of person that we are. Again, we're going to look at how that isn't true. With any emotion, there is also always a story attached to it. So, for example, if you're feeling anxious about something, then the mind will pick something in the outside world and say, that's what you're feeling anxious about. So it's because I've lost a load of money that I'm feeling anxious, or it's because I've lost my job that I'm feeling anxious, or it's because that person had a go at me that I'm feeling really angry. So there's always a story attached to the emotion that also makes us, that is always the painful thing. The story is always the painful thing. But this is one of the reasons that it stops us wanting to feel the emotion, is because we innocently believe that the story that the mind is telling about the emotion is the truth. And lastly, we also can believe that we can't handle it. So this is something that I think is talked about a lot on kind of like social media, in the self-help world, that we need to be able to handle our emotions or manage our emotions or navigate our emotions. And just what if none of that is true? Because quite frankly, it's all exhausting. And there's actually nothing really to handle. But there can be this belief, this kind of like subconscious and conscious belief in our minds that I can't handle it, particularly whatever the particular emotion is that you struggle with, is I can't handle that. This can't be here. But what if none of that is true? So now I'm going to explore what I believe to be the truth about emotions that is the complete reverse of all of the things that I just talked about, the reasons why we tend to resist them. And when we see the truth about emotions, and not just on an intellectual level, but when we actually really know this to be true, this is where the transformation can come, where we can have, maybe not 100%. I think it's possible for people to have it 100% of the time. I certainly don't have emotional freedom 100% of the time, but I have way more emotional freedom than I used to. And I also am able to recognize much more quickly when I'm in a state of believing something about an emotion that's passing through me. And I'm sure that it is completely possible to have utter emotional freedom, because what I'm pointing to here is the truth about how emotions are working. So emotions are the reflection or the shadow of our thinking, of thought. And all of that thought, feeling thought, is all an energy. We can't see it, we can't pick it up. And as Michael Neal, a wonderful coach that I love, says, you can't pick it up and put it in a bucket. It is an energy. It's part of life. It's part of what makes up our experience of being human. And as such, that energy is continually flowing. Much like our lungs are always breathing, our blood is always circulating, our stomach is usually in some form of digestion. There's always something going on in the body. There's always movement. There's energy there. The same thing is true in our emotional landscape. The energy that is what's the word? Sorry, the word's gone out of my head. Active. This isn't the word I was thinking of. Is activating life. Is that emotional energy. So it's continually flowing all of the time in every single moment. So no emotion, no thought, no emotion is ever permanent, ever. It is utterly impossible to get stuck in an emotion. Now, we can have habits with emotions. We can have emotions that show up more frequently than others, absolutely. But it is absolutely impossible to get stuck in it because it's an energy that's flowing. It is like the weather moving. It is like a river that flows. It's like the tides coming in and out. All of those kind of weather, naturey metaphors that are used for a reason, because it's kind of the only way to it's a brilliant way to kind of equate it to the same thing, because it is all nature. We are nature. We are this energy, this life force, and emotions are part of that. And it's always moving, always changing. So it's utterly impossible to be stuck or for it to be permanent, which is why we're not permanently stuck in something like love or happiness or joy either. It's not part of our design, because it's an experience that is designed to move through us, okay, which I'm going to talk a bit more about in a minute. So it is moving, it is temporary, and also, and this is a big one that can be really hard to see, it isn't personal. What if it isn't personal? What if your emotions don't mean a damn thing about you? Now, the brain, the mind, will absolutely, so there's an energy flowing, and the mind will absolutely pick up something to make sense of it. It will give it the label that we've all agreed on. Oh, this is joy. Oh, this is excitement. Oh, this is grief. Oh, this is anger. Oh, this is stress. And then it will tell a story about it. Oh, and it's because, and attach it to the outside world. But what if, because that story is completely made up, okay? That story is just a perception of what is going on. It's not the absolute truth of it. And what if emotions are just a sensation? So something that I do and has really helped me to see this is that when an emotion is coming into me, what I try to do is just to let it be there, and then to notice what is the sensation in my body. And so let's use anxiety as an example. So there's a fluttering in the chest, there's a feeling in the stomach, there might be some, beating of the heart, the mind might be whirring. And when I feel it in my body, without the label that the mind has given it, anxiety, this is anxiety, it's just a sensation in the body. And then I can look at, well, what's the story that my mind is telling? Oh, you might get ill next week when you've got that big presentation to give. Or, oh, what if your son isn't happy at school? There'll be some story that the mind is attaching to it and telling about it, as well as the label. But when we really look at it, so without the story attached to it, it's just a sensation in the body. The story is never true. And the sensation in the body, when felt, will absolutely pass and is completely safe, because the body is always designed to come back to homeostasis or to balance. The emotions are, as soon as you have, one of my teachers, Amy Johnson, talks about this, as soon as you've noticed it in your system, it's already leaving, it's already moving, because it's in perpetual motion. But it's only when we're in an experience, so say we feel a bit of anxiety, it's in the body, and then the mind, we start to believe the story of the mind, and then we chew it over. Oh, what if this is true? And how can I do that? And oh, this is awful. I don't want to feel like this again. And we end up innocently kind of creating more of a mess in our system than if we were just able just to, oh, here it is, and let it be here. Let ourselves feel it. So it's a bit like, if you imagine, so if you're watching a movie and you feel sad for the character, we're really willing to let ourselves just really feel sad for the character. Or we will, if something amazing happens, you feel loads of joy for that character in the movie, you're really prepared to be in the immersive experience of all of that emotion. But as soon as your mind, if it was about you, the person, what you believe to be you, the person, it's a completely different kettle of fish. So if I'm feeling it about the character in the movie, perfectly fine, because we know it's impersonal, it's nothing to do with us, it's going to pass on through, there's no story attached to it. But when it's about us in our life, the me that the mind believes is real, the story looks real, it looks like we're going to get stuck, it looks like it means something about us as a person. And none of that is true. It's exactly the same as feeling an emotion on behalf of a character in a movie. Or what if it's exactly like that? So I would really encourage you to have a look at that and really to look at everything that I'm pointing to here in terms of that it is an emotion, that feelings and emotions are perpetually moving. They are not personal. The story that the mind is telling is not true. And because of that, they are completely safe. They are temporary, they are not permanent, and they are not meaningful in the way that we believe. And in terms of the self that the mind likes to attach the story to, that self is also just a collection of thoughts and beliefs. So that isn't real in any real sense. And this can also really help us to know, when we really know that the Lindsay, the character in this life, that my mind has lots of thoughts and beliefs about and looks like a really real, true and solid thing. But when we really look at that, we can see that our personality, who we are, our story is just a collection of thoughts and beliefs. That when we can really know that we are just this life energy, this life force in a body, in a human body, and emotions, experience is going to pass through, it becomes much easier just to let it be there and let it navigate. When we know that the person that it looks like it's so personal about isn't actually a real and fixed thing. Because when we get into trouble or emotional trouble in our lives or emotional strife in our life is when we believe that the experience that is passing through us is who we are. So all of the things that go on in our psychology, our thoughts, our feelings, our sensations, our experiences, the things that happen to us, all of this energy that's constantly flowing and moving through us, if we believe that that's who I am, that's Lindsay, and not some deeper, solid, continuous presence or awareness that we really are, the thing that's looking at all of the experience, the thing that can notice the emotions, the thing that can notice the sensations that are passing through, that thing that doesn't change. When we innocently misidentify with all of the psychology, all of the thoughts and feelings, that's where we get into suffering. And that's where we can believe all of this crap that we believe about emotions, rather than just knowing that we are the space within which all of that occurs. So I know this video is getting long, but I did actually, just before I started recording this video, I received an email from someone asking for some support around a particular issue. And I'm just going to read a small portion of it because I think it might be really helpful. It's a helpful example to talk through this. So this person has recently split up with their girlfriend and is feeling some loneliness. So I'll just read briefly what he's written here. So here's the real issue. I've been feeling bouts of loneliness, especially when I close from work and I'm alone in my room. The tendency to escape such feelings also becomes stronger, and I sometimes give in to some unhelpful habits. I've grown to a point where I've come to know that feelings are as unavoidable as life and death. Very true. So I don't really want to escape the loneliness. What I want to do is be at peace with it, to understand it. So I think this is a really brilliant example of someone who is, understandably, they've separated from a girlfriend. There's going to be some feelings about that, which are totally okay, totally fine, whatever we're feeling. But there's an emotion of loneliness coming in that he's obviously really trying to be with, which is amazing. And I'm really glad that he's asked this question. But there's a sensation coming in that has the label of loneliness attached to it, then also has the story, I am lonely because I have split up with my girlfriend and I am on my own. And then because it's obviously a fresh thing, this emotion is obviously coming back round a lot. It's here a lot, it's present. And as soon as he's not busy about it, it looks like the emotion's just here and telling a story. And within that story, there's bound to be some kind of painful belief about him as a person, or about what it means for the future, or something, I'll always be lonely, or I'll always be alone. There's bound to be some kind of narration going on in the mind about this. And also, as we can see, there's also some kind of like feeling that he can't handle this, and so he's going to some unhelpful habits in order to help move it along, in order to help cope with it. But if in this situation, this person really knew that when the experience of loneliness was here, if we're able just to say, okay, what's in the body? What does this feel like? It might be an ache in the chest or a sick feeling in the stomach. Who knows? It's going to feel different for everybody. And if we can look at, okay, what's here in the body without, one, the label that we call loneliness, because quite frankly, some emotions don't feel that different, but we just label them differently. Without the story attached to it, which is not the truth, it's just something his mind's presenting about why he's lonely and what it means and what it might mean about the future. If those things aren't attached, it is merely a sensation in the body, in the energy space, that's absolutely just wanting to be felt, and then it will move on. And it's really simple. There's nothing more, nothing less going on. But it's when we believe all of the things that loneliness means about us, or about our future, or about us as a person, that's where it gets painful. And that's where, understandably, we then reach for a habit to help ourselves feel better, even though that isn't what's really happening. And I've got lots of videos on that. But it's when we believe the story that this emotion means something, as this person innocently is here, then of course we're going to look for something to help us to feel better. That's just a natural byproduct, and that's okay. But the habit isn't actually helping anyway. But I just really want to see that we can be at peace with an emotion. We can allow ourselves to feel it if we know the truth about it, which in this situation is loneliness is an energy. It's going to pass, it's going to move, and it doesn't mean a damn thing about this person. It doesn't mean anything about them. It doesn't mean anything about their life. It's just a sensation passing through. So I hope that this has been helpful. It's been a long video. Amazing if you watched to the end. Thank you so much. Please do give this video a like. Please do share it with someone if you feel it's been helpful. And please do subscribe if you'd like to hear more from me. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.